Welcome, everybody, to, I presume, the Jason Christoff podcast on the psychology of freedom. And today I have a very, very important guest who has an extremely important message for you to digest. Take what works for you, leave the rest. I don't think there's going to be much to leave because the information is so valuable. Now, this man goes under the pen name Etienne de la Boetie squared. He is an author of two very important books. There is a brand new one. And Etienne, when is that second book coming out? And then we'll get into your important message. So when does that second book become released?
The book is actually shipping now, and we're working on getting it into independent bookstores and ideally all bookstores. But the book is available now. It's To See the Cage is to Leave It. 25 techniques the few use to control the many. And the website is seethecage.com.
And we're just going to dive right into it. First of all, your pen name, HN de la Boussie squared. This is this was the original name of a French philosopher or French novel, not a novelist, but maybe almost like a reporter of his day
Well, he
regarding.
was
Yeah, go ahead.
sure, sure. So he was a magistrate. He was a man of letters. He was a poet. He was a political philosopher. Some people call him the first voluntarist. And really, what he's known for is exposing the tricks and the techniques that rulers use, not just to get obedience, but to get fealty and adoration. And you're getting robbed and you're getting tax farmed, but you're singing "God Save the King," the "God Save the Queen" or "All Hail the Chief." Like you're being tricked into an adoration for the ruling class using a variety of unethically manipulative tricks. And he was really the first one to point out that the ruling class, back then monarchy, was running tricks on the population to get them to go along with something that isn't in their interest. And so when I came out with my first book, Gov't, the biggest scam in history, my kids were in the government school system. I was divorced, and my ex-wife had my kids in the public school system. And so I didn't want my kids to get any heat for what dad was doing. And so I chose to use the nom de plume. Now my kids, one of them has graduated college, one of them is, kind of finishing college. And so I could actually, go and reveal my real name. But now everybody knows me as Etienne de la Boetie squared. And when you put the numeral 2 on, you can find me versus the original, and you can find me in search engines and things like that. And so now I'm kind of stuck with it. I'm not really hiding, as you know. A lot of hundreds, if not thousands, of people within the liberty movement know my real name. And
Yes.
so I'm not ready to kind of release it yet because I don't want to have cause confusion in the market or anything like that. But that's the reason for the pen name.
And I came across your work, and you know of my work in, say, whatever space you want to designate that as, sort of like deep thinking with a motivation to live a better life. That's sort of the space that we're both in. And I want people to know that it took me a little bit of time, not much, because I was familiar with some of the common ground, but it did take me some time to wrap my head around the fact that, and I want to get this out right now, that how Etienne de la Boetie squared and the books that you've authored, you unpacked the idea that we don't need government whatsoever. Now, when people hear that, they recoil. And I know why they recoil, but I've heard you talk about it in ways that, take down my hesitation. Not
Mhm.
that I have the biggest hesitation wall in the world around what you're talking about, but it would scare most people initially. So, how would you start the conversation or start explaining to the average person without triggering, a fear response that they don't really need government in their lives? They kind of know this as well, as the government steals from them, poisons the shit out of them at every turn. The government's there to make people's lives miserable, but most people can't envision, because of the indoctrination and brainwashing and mind control, they can't envision living their lives without someone stealing their money, without someone bullying them, without someone poisoning them. So it's almost like you have to give them the right words to at least get the idea gestating in the fertile soil of their subconscious. And I know you can do that. So how can we get someone from A to B, getting them at least considering that a force that poisons them and steals their money, they're probably better off without that in their lives? How do we get there?
Well, in my first book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, the subtitle is How Intergenerational Organized Crime Runs the Government, the Media, and Academia. And the first thing you've really got to understand is that the people behind government, so think of government as a technique for robbing and controlling populations, and the people that are behind it and that are making trillions of dollars on the ability to tax farm humanity and transfer the money out the back door in trillion-dollar bailouts to banks through the TARP and the TOLF and the bailouts and the stimulus and weapon systems that we don't need for wars based on lies and manufactured evidence and ethanol subsidies, and the list go, and vaccination, forced mandatory vaccinations, and all of the ways the government is tricking and tax farming and passing window, taking their money. The number one weapon is they've been controlling the information society receives about the legitimacy and the desirability of having a government. So they're whether it's through the monopoly media, whether it's through the monopoly, the mandatory government school, running the Prussian model of education to trick everybody into thinking that government is legitimate, desirable, and necessary before they're old enough to really evaluate the logic and the morality of that claim. Almost everybody that's listening to us has been having the information controlled to them, and so that dynamic is why people, and so with the new book, To See the Cage is to Leave It, what I'm exposing is that they've been running a variety of unethically manipulative tricks to trick the population into a religious belief in government. They're using an indoctrinated religion called statism, which is the belief in the desirability, the legitimacy, and the necessity of government, to trick the population into this belief system. And they're actually changing or controlling that the information that comes across through the media, in films and in television shows and in social media, to trick the population into, the government is always the hero in the movies. They're product placing the flag at moments of high positive emotion. They're using subliminal programming in the television. They're using all of these tricks that give the population a kind of a warm and fuzzy, at the same time that the movies and the TV shows are presenting the alternative, which is real freedom, voluntarism, peaceful anarchy. Anarchy doesn't mean no rules, it means no rulers. But because the rulers don't want the population to know there's an option on the menu called no rulers, the media system presents a future without government as chaos,
Right.
dystopia, Mad Max scenarios of biker gangs roaming the countryside, raping women, and it's just craziness. And if you don't know that that's going on, if you don't know that the government is running these unethically manipulative tricks on you, then you're not even in the game. And so
So
what I'm really trying to do is show everybody how the magician does the tricks so that they can begin to unpack and really evaluate what they were taught as a child about the legitimacy, the necessity, and the morality of having a government in the first place.
the legitimacy basically, so why the the average person would think this is the way it's always been, and they have that sense of learned helplessness.
Yeah.
But I remember you telling me one day that it wasn't legitimate to have government because two people can't hold hands and sort of get together and vote to have rights for themselves that other individuals don't have. And
Mm.
that made a lot of sense to me. So could you clarify that for the average person as to the non-legitimacy of the system of rule that we're all exposed to today?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, if my beautiful fiance Julie and I can't vote to rob Jason because there's two of us and one of Jason, it doesn't matter if there's three of us or 10 of us or 335 million of us. There's no magical additional person that makes something that is immoral and illogical now moral and logical just because you're in the majority. And so democracy is really the political equivalent of gang rape or lynching. And so you cannot be bound by a social contract that you did not sign. And if I myself don't have the right to take your money or make up rules for you myself, then I can't delegate a right that I don't have myself to a representative or to a government to represent me doing something that I don't have the ability to do myself. So government has been the biggest scam in history, but because they indoctrinate the belief in the government into children, most people have never really, evaluated the morality and the logic of the claim because they've always accepted it, on its face because it was given to them when they were children. And then the government is again controlling the information that people receive so that they never ever really encounter that idea except in these, kind of like, pirate broadcasts where, we're a little bit like Neo and Morpheus surfacing in the Nebuchadnezzar and sending out this pirate signal to tell people the good news message that they are free, that you really don't owe anybody any money because of where you were born. You really don't owe anybody any allegiance because of an invisible line on this side or that side of a border. You're not really an American or a Canadian by virtue of where you're born. You are a free and independent human being that has been born into a slavery system that is trying to trick you into an artificial tribe to get you to associate, with an artificial tribe across, in some cases, thousands and thousands of miles that is quote unquote representing dozens and dozens of diverse people that speak different languages in Canada. That we got French speakers, we got, in America. It's like, the average person in Maine in the United States doesn't have a lot in common with somebody in Hawaii, and somebody in Alaska doesn't really have a lot of, in common with somebody in New Mexico. And, I could go on and on. But government has been the biggest scam in all of human history because it's the most profitable way to tax farm, rob, and control human beings.
Absolutely. So basically what you're saying for the person out there is that the people that we're voting for, they are, what is their role in this thing called a tax farm? And how does a tax farm really work for people that don't really understand the concept?
First of all, we're not really voting. What we're doing what's going on is they're pretending to let us elect them. Okay, I want to repeat that again. They are pretending to let us elect them. So what they're doing here in the United States and in other countries is they're having a rigged game, okay, where they're controlling the outcome through, in the United States, unauditable black box voting machines and mail-in ballots, which are notoriously easy to rig. They're controlling the outcome with this monopoly media system that, that is tricking the population into thinking that both parties are not owned and controlled by the same people. And then they're using the fact that they gave you the vote, which is what I like to call the slave's suggestion box, okay? And that you, because you've now elected them, because you've now participated in their rigged game, that you now acquiesce and now owe them money. And if you didn't like the outcome, then you've just got to vote harder in the rigged game. Even if you break the rigged game down, it's not moral, it's not legitimate, it's not logical, and it's so easily rigged by moneyed interests using the monopoly media, using behavioral psychology, using again the black box voting machines and the mail-in ballots, that it's essentially completely worthless. But again, getting back to the basics of it, if my lovely fiance and myself can't vote to rob Jason because there's two of us and one of you, well, it doesn't matter if there's 10 of us. It doesn't matter if there's 125 million of us, and out of the 125 million, we create a bureaucracy and a group of shave-headed cult members with guns to enforce the commandments of the religion on Jason. It's not going to be any more legitimate just because there's now a bureaucracy involved and there's less people. And so it really is, they're tricking, people by controlling the information that they believe in. And if people just kind of step back and evaluate what they're being told as adults, it's like, hey, is there any way to have a moral, legitimate government? And most people are going to find out that there's not. But it really takes somebody with an open mind, to get over the fear that they've instilled, through the monopoly media, through the television shows, through the social media and the programming that has been going on behind the scenes, that I break down in kind of detail in my book, To See the Cages, to Leave It, 25 techniques the few use to control the many. And while it's really 26 because I snuck in an extra technique in the last, but I could have gone to 30.
Yeah.
I could have gone to 35. I just had to ship the book, and I felt like I hit all of the major ones.
So, when you see something on social media, like me, say you see the Hodge twins, which is getting forced onto my page these days, you might see Tucker Carlson, you might see Joe Rogan, or people like this. And the public doesn't seem aware that just talking about the government officials or the government policies or the government processes like they're legitimate
Mhm.
is sort of an old form of energy magic where they're sucking some sort of etheric force out of us into these concepts where we're giving them life. Like if no one talked about this like it was legitimate,
Mhm.
I mean, how
Yeah.
long would this? So basically, what I'm saying is, do you see the same thing that I see, that all this social commentary about government is is just sort of one layer of legitimizing. Like no one's everybody's like, well, Trump did this, or the Democrats would have done that, or someone assassinated this. I'm not too sure who got assassinated. It looked like it was a member of the government, someone who voted against extending medical coverage to illegal immigrants. Someone got assassinated. But just talking about it in this way, do you see it, just the commentary, as one major layer of legitimizing this entire horse and pony show?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean that in fact, I mean that is the big trick. That is the big scam that on every single channel, government is legitimate. Turn the channel. Government is legitimate. Government is legitimate. Government is legitimate. And so there's a, in my book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, I break down, I show media ownership charts. There's on the old school television side, there's about six companies running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries to give everybody the illusion that there's all these different channels and information sources in society. And what most people don't realize is that, when you take a look at a media ownership chart, all of these hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries, magazines, newspapers, radio stations, television stations, they're all rolling up into this small handful of companies operating as a cartel to control the information that people receive about the legitimacy, the necessity, and the desirability of having a government. If there were only two channels, okay, and Jason and Etienne were on one channel, and there was a liar like Tucker Carlson on the other channel, okay, or CIA intern Anderson Cooper, or any of the other folks that are not giving you the alternative, or never present to you the alternative. So if you think Tucker Carlson is legitimate, then why isn't Tucker Carlson ever interviewing a legitimate, real voluntarist or a legitimate, real critic of the system? That's kind of my point. But if every chance, if it was between us and Anderson Pooper, and you were going back and forth between listening to us talk about the case against the illegitimacy of government, and Anderson Pooper trying to explain the mythology of government, you'd be like, well, those two guys, that's more logical, that's more honest, that's more moral. Now, instead of two channels, imagine that we're on one channel and there's 500 channels of government is legitimate, government is legitimate, government is legitimate, government is legitimate, government is legitimate. So you'd actually have to kind of find the authentic voices. Now, but it's even worse than that, because the system that we have, there's 500 channels of it's government is legitimate, and there's 0 channels of us. And that is the big con. And so if you're stealing trillions of dollars through the bailouts, the stimulus, the weapon systems that we don't need, the mandatory vaccines, the ethanol subsidies, and all of the other ways that government is sliding money out the back door to, controlled interests, well, you can easily see how you could spend hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars a year on the ability to ensure that that system continues, and that nobody understands that you're stealing their money in a very sophisticated way that's been going on for a very, very long time, using techniques that the original Etienne de la Boetie wrote about in the 1500s, where some of those techniques were already hundreds or thousand plus years old in the time of that Boetie was writing, that are still being used today. And then once that is the way that they're controlling that information to society.
So I mean, obviously, one of the solutions you talk about is being a voluntarist.
Mm.
So what is that, and how is that better than someone telling me I got to give them half my income, or I get thrown in a cage, or they'll just steal that money as it comes in? So how does being a voluntarist pave the bumpy road to maybe where we got to go, like make things a little easier in the future. If that's going to be the goal, what is a voluntarist?
So, and that really is kind of the good news message of both of my books is that a voluntarist is somebody that believes that all relationships between human beings must be voluntary, that nobody has rights that other people don't. Nobody has an exemption from morality, especially the government. Nobody has the ability to steal your money or make up rules for you. But there's also a kind of understanding that the world is a self-organizing system. It produces spontaneous order, and that everything that the government does would be provided by the free market, by mutual aid societies, by nonprofits, by insurance companies, not monopoly, crony capitalism insurance companies, but if there was a diverse, genuine free market where some companies weren't getting, overfunded by the banks that create money out of thin air and are buying up the world with their little paper tickets, and you actually had a diversity of insurance providers, then co-ops, homeowners associations, genuine charities. There's all different ways where you can have governance without having government, and society would be much wealthier and much more prosperous in a voluntary world than in this world of coercion and theft and taxation and economic misallocation and government granted monopolies and government monopoly privileges and $300 EpiPens and $400 a month for insulin and all of the ways that government is stealing and robbing the population. The number one way is stealing the value out of the money. And so at the top of the pyramid, the people that are benefiting the most from this system are the banks. The banks have lobbied and bribed government in the United States to pass the Federal Reserve Act, which created a private central bank called the Federal Reserve. The private central bank called the Federal Reserve is backstopping the money center banks, the JP Morgans, the Citigroups, the Wells Fargos, the Bank of Americas, the Goldman Sachses, to engage in something called fractional reserve banking, where they create money out of thin air, even though it's inflationary and even though it's stealing the money stealing the value out of the money that everybody else earns and saves. Okay. That is the number one way that they're waging economic warfare against us. That's the number one way that they're stealing the value out of our money. And that is what is paying for the ability to have bought up the media, monopolize the media so that people don't understand what's really going on. And so I do truly believe it is the banks at the top and the people that own the banks. And that is the system that has allowed them to buy up the media and to buy up the politicians and to, impose this, a mandatory government Prussian school model on everybody, because they're stealing the value out of the money in a way that is impoverishing the population. We'd be way, way, way. Everybody would be dramatically wealthier if the government, forget the confiscatory taxation, if the government just wasn't stealing the value out of everybody's money.
How is it? So it's invisible theft.
Mhm,
I have $100 US American bill
mhm,
in 1970, and it could buy me X amount of groceries.
mhm,
Now, today, the same $100 American bill,
mhm.
$100, will only probably buy me, you know, a lot less groceries, maybe 20% less, or sorry, 80% less, but 20% of what I could buy in 1970. Or maybe it's even worse than that. But can you explain how that magic show actually works? How does me saving cash come back to bite me in the ass where like and you're saying this devaluation of the money in my wallet or the money under my mattress or the money in my bank account, you're saying that the loss of purchasing power of my money that I save is coordinated and not even really coordinated, sort of a side effect of the government process. So how actually does my dollars lose money when I'm looking at it and it's the same dollar? How do you explain that to someone?
Sure. Let's go back even further. Let's go back to Roman times. And so before we do that, money, think of money, the value of money a little bit like a Babe Ruth rookie card, a baseball card. If there's one Babe Ruth rookie card in the world, it's worth a whole bunch of money.
Mm.
If there's two Babe Ruth rookie cards, it's worth, less to the wealthy collectors that are trying to, get, put together their collection, and if you find, in a warehouse somewhere, dusted off a box and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of Babe Ruth rookie cards, then the value of the Babe Ruth rookie card drops dramatically. And so money really needs to be relatively rare to be able to hold its value. And if it's not rare, if the governments are printing a gazillion dollars like they did in the Weimar Republic or like they did in the hyperinflation of Yugoslavia or the hyperinflation of Zimbabwe or other things of hyperinflation, then the value of the money collapses. Society is impoverished. Everyone is dead broke, living in a militarized police state. And so there needs to be a fair and an equitable way for money to come into circulation to where governments can't steal the value out of the money. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
we go back in history, if we go back to Roman times, the coin of the realm was a 1 ounce gold coin called a denarius. And in Roman times, before the Romans devalued their money, and today money is devalued with a printing press. In Roman times, it was devalued. There were two ways that it was devalued. Number one, coins were clipped, and so a dishonest, crooked merchant would take a coin in commerce, and he would take he would cut off that just a little bit around the edge of the coin, and then the coin would be spent into circulation, and another dishonest merchant would cut off a little bit more of the coin, and it would be spent into circulation. And after, wash, rinse, and repeat, and not every merchant was dishonest, but just, the dishonest ones or dishonest person. So dishonest person gets the coin and cuts a little bit off. And so that was called clipping. And the reason that, the American dime and the American quarter have all the ridges on the outside, that's called reading. And reading is so that you can tell if the coin's been clipped. And so that was
Wow.
a
Okay.
kind of a technique that was used to demonstrate that the coin was not clipped, that is carried over into modern times. Even though we in the United States we don't even have coins, they're technically tokens, because a coin is a small disc of an inherently precious metal of some kind of value that has the hallmark of the mint, hallmark of quality on it. And so because we now are using tokens, it's kind of even silly to have them readed, because there's no value in cutting in clipping it, because it's not made of a precious metal anymore.
Right.
And so, but that was the number one way that you would have inflation, is by the end of that cycle, now the coin doesn't weigh an ounce. Now the coin is, 0.80 of an ounce. And so a merchant is not going to give you the same amount of goods for a clipped coin. And so
Right.
now that inflation has stolen the value out of your denarius. Now,
Right.
eventually, the Romans, the organized crime government of the time, the Caesars, would take in the coins and they figured out a more effective way of doing that, and they would melt the coins down, and they would, melt a gold coin or a silver coin down, and they would add a base metal to the mix, and then they would recast the coins. And
Right.
if they added 5% of base metal, then they would have 5% more coins, and they would be tricking the population and stealing the value out of everybody's, coins.
Right.
And a lot of, historians, and as that process goes on and on and on through successive Caesars and successive generations, eventually you don't have any precious metal value at all in the coins, and now they're reduced to tokens. And then the economy collapses, and a lot of historians believe that that was one of the reasons that by the time the money was debased and wasn't really worth anything, and people didn't trust the value of the money, that's why, Rome collapsed. And so those were the original ways of stealing the value through inflation. Now, before that process happened, so when there was, an ounce of gold and a denarius would buy a fine toga, a belt, and a fine pair of sandals. So it would buy a man's suit, essentially, in Roman times, okay? Fast forward to, let's say, 1911, before the Federal Reserve Act, and the coin of the realm is a 1 ounce gold coin, a St. Gaudens gold piece. And back then, paper money was a warehouse receipt for real money, which was the gold coin that you can't print on the printing press and you can't digitally create as they do today. And so that 1 ounce gold coin would buy a finely tailored man's suit, a really, really nice belt, and a fine pair of shoes. Now, if you took the $20 gold piece and you took the $20 bill that was the warehouse receipt for the gold piece, and you buried them in a can in your backyard and you dug it up today, the 20 ounce gold coin, or the 1 ounce gold coin, is worth $3,300 US. And so you can still buy a very finely tailored man's suit, an alligator belt, and a really, really nice pair of shoes. And you can't really buy anything with the $20 bill.
Right.
And so what happened to the value contained in the $20 bill? It's been stolen by the government. And another way to think of it is, imagine if you, dear listener or dear viewer, had one single dollar and I had one single dollar. And so I have 50%, and there's only $2 in the world. I have 50% of the world's wealth. And you, dear listener or dear viewer, you have 50% of the world's wealth. And a bank comes along and creates $2 additional through fractional reserve banking, or a government comes along and creates $2 additional through quantitative easing, or printing press, or digital dollar creation. Now, you and I have been reduced to 25% of the world's wealth, and the bank or the government has stolen 50% of the world's wealth. And that's what's been going on. And the first thing that they did is they bought up the media, so the media would not tell you what is really going on. The media is there to distract you and deceive you and to make you look over here and to get you focused on children's games played by adults and all kinds of crazy stuff, using behavioral psychology and using flicker rates and using all kinds of tricks and techniques, so that you're scatterbrained. We're going to put stuff in the food. We're going to put stuff in the vaccines. We're going to make it so you can't think straight, so that you're focused on things other than really kind of the most basic things of the world, which is somebody is tricking you into an obedience system. They're controlling your movement. They're stealing the value out of their money. And they're spying on you, warrantlessly wiretapping your phone, and engaged in a variety of crimes against you. And then the way they get away with it is this control of perception system. It is the government, the media, and academia working together to make sure you don't understand what is really going on in the world.
So, what even makes it worse potentially is that they're taking the dollars or whatever you pay paper tickets,
Mhm.
and then they're saying buying a building in a company, which it has a different accrued value over time than someone with the equivalent of the cash. So it's almost like they're taking the life force of the humans, putting it in assets, and then draining our money away and keeping the assets for themselves, which always has value inherently somewhere down the road. So they're actually not only stealing the value of our money, they're stealing our life force to the point where all of our energy is in assets and almost out of the people. Does that make any sense whatsoever?
Oh, absolutely. It's a way of waging a kind of economic warfare against the people to keep them impoverished so that they're on the hamster wheel of work, of having to work, and that where they don't have any spare time to be well read, to take, to go to lectures, to have, free time. Some people have to work two jobs, three jobs. Their children, have to go and learn business instead of, economics or the arts or things like that. They can't have a gap year to sit around and read books that they, want to read. They can't take any time off. Versus in a voluntarist world, people would be amazingly wealthy. And there would, business that, some people, a lot of people would not have to work. A lot of people could pay to have their kids have, gap years and pay to have them have a liberal arts education, and businesses would have to compete for workers, and that would bid up the prices of wages, and there would be more economic opportunity, and it would just be so incredibly
Mm.
better. We would be, society would be more harmonious because you wouldn't have to fight at the school board level that where if you lose, your kid gets taught critical race theory or LGBTQT studies or whatever else nonsense they're teaching in the government school system. You could buy whatever kind of education you wanted for your children. You could buy Acton Academy, you could buy Waldorf, you could buy Montessori.
Mm.
It could be self-directed learning. There's not going to be a hidden curriculum in the school system. And so really they don't want there to be independent wealth also, because if there's independent wealth, then there's lots and lots of money available to organizations like mine, the Art of Liberty Foundation, to get this message out. Imagine if we had if we could double or triple or quadruple our budget every year, and like it's controlling the information society receives by keeping people in the mandatory government school system, by controlling the alternatives, the communications alternatives that are out there, stifling those, the ability to censor authentic voices, the ability to turn up controlled opposition voices. There's just so many ways that keeping the population impoverished impacts their ability to do anything about what's going on.
So I think you also wanted to show, maybe share the screen. Do you still want to share the screen and show a little bit of the new book?
Yeah, we'll just do a little, and I'll just kind of take your audience very quickly through some of the techniques. And then also what I wanted to do is I wanted, people to actually kind of see the book, to understand it's very visual rich, and kind of explain the reason that it's so visual rich. And I do so much with memes, and I do so much with visualizations, is that a lot of your audience, they already know all this. I have no doubt that you have a very high quality audience that's very in tune with what's going on, and a lot of what we've been talking about, they already know. And so I did not write this book for that fraction of your audience.
Mm.
What my books are really designed to wake up your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues, your family to the system, because most people are visual learners, and then they come to insight much quicker when they see an image. And a lot of people, frankly, if I'd wrote a text only book, they're not going to read it, and they
Right.
know that if they give it to their friend or family member, the family member's not going to read it. But one of the unique things about my first book, and we're seeing the same thing in kind of the new book, is that over 10%, around 10%, I won't say over, but somewhere around 10% of all the copies that we've sold, and we've sold thousands and thousands and thousands of copies to 25 plus countries where people are frequently paying, twice the cost of the book to get it shipped to, South Africa or Denmark or, Sweden or you name it. They're being bought in friends bundles, 5, 10 copies. And so it's become one of those rare books that people are buying in 5s and 10s, giving away to their friends to help them wake up, because it is so effective to do that. Because all you've really got to do is kind of flip through this book, and you can't not put it down. Like, you're going to get that information that is going to flow in, because it is visual, and because a meme can be like a Molotov cocktail through the Overton window.
Yeah.
You're able to kind of convey something in a split second to people, and if they only have a split second, or they're only willing to kind of look for a split second, generally they get hooked. And so part of my work is creating books that are effective at waking people up, because most people are visual learners, and I can bring them to that moment of insight that they would not have been able to do with a regular text only book. So I'm going to share my screen.
Excellent.
And here's my cover. Welcome to see the cage is to leave it. And I'm just going to go through just some of the techniques, just to take, just so that you understand what we're talking about. Here's a visualization that I
Could,
gave
could you
about
make
if
it
I
a
have
little, could you make it a little bigger maybe? Is that possible? So people could see it on the screen a bit easier potentially?
so I can.
There. Okay,
So
that's good.
yeah, so
That's better.
so this was the visualization of what we just discussed. If I have a dollar and you have a
Yeah.
dollar. With my old book, it was neat because it's a landscape book and it fits the screen ever so perfectly. By the way, this is the media ownership chart that I mentioned earlier. 6 companies running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries to give everybody the illusion of choice. If I was to, if you click on the in the EPUB version of the book, if you click on that visualization, you're going to go, and it's going to bring up the larger format version of that
Yeah.
visualization. And then
Beautiful.
if you wanted to go really, really high res, then you can go ahead and you can download either the JPEG or the PDF version of that visualization. And then that's some of the magic. It's an interactive book. And so, just to give everybody an idea of like what we're talking about. Because I don't want you to take my word for it, right? I want you to see it for yourself, because seeing is believing. And so this is the media ownership that I was talking about. And we can just go into that, here just a little bit. And so here's News Corp,
So you can blow
which
it up
owns,
so that you can see absolutely everything.
so you can see absolutely everything. And so News Corp doesn't just own Fox News. News Corp owns more than 175 newspapers worldwide. They own magazines. They own internet properties. They own book publishing companies. They own television production. They own television programming. They own Fox. They own Fox College Sports, Fox reality shows, FX networks, Fox International channels, Fox Sports Net, Fox Movies, Fox News Channel. They own, individual properties like the special, back then the special report with Brit Hume, or the Fox Report, or On the Record with Greta Van Susteren, or Fox News Sunday, or they
Wow.
know the National Geographic Channel. This is a little dated. It may have changed, but I think you're getting the idea. They own film. They own 20th Century Fox. They own Fox Searchlight Pictures. They own New Regency, 20% of that. They own satellite. They own entire satellite networks. We could keep going. We could go to Disney. Disney doesn't just own parks and resorts. They own Walt Disney Pictures. They own Touchstone Pictures. They own Hollywood Pictures. They own Miramax Films. I think you're starting to get the idea. But if you went and told your friends, your family, that there were, 6 monopoly media companies running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries to trick them into thinking there's a wide variety of information sources in society, they may or may not believe you. But if you show them a, media ownership chart, they're going to come to that insight, much quicker. So these are other visualizations that I won't get into, but equally as eye-opening, equally as we'll say impactful with your friends, your family, and your colleagues. And so, because I really want to get into the big idea, and that is that they're indoctrinating the population with the belief in government as a religion.
Mm-hmm.
They're not calling it a religion, but they're using all the tricks and the techniques of a unethically manipulative religion, and it produces some very humorous outcomes, such as people dressing in flags and other things. And so that religion is the religion of statism. And so the government is the God. The flag is the indoctrinated holy symbol. The presidents are the deities. People engage in common prayer, started in the school system in the United States. They pledge their allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America. There's flag worship ceremonies at, sporting events. The cathedral, the Capitol is the cathedral that looks like the Vatican for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
The school is the church. And so the flag is kind of a form of idolatry. Is not the state an idol? Is it not like any graven image into which men have read supernatural powers and superhuman capacities? The state can feed us when we are hungry. It can heal us when we are ill. It can raise wages and lower prices, even at the same time. It can educate our children without cost. It can provide us against the contingencies of old age. What cannot the state do for us if only we have faith in it? And so, very, very quickly, you're coming to a moment of insight just by skimming some of the visualizations that make the point that we're talking about, here, without having to get into a dense book. And then there's some amazing videos that if you click on in the EPUB version of the book, I could screen pop this Larkin Rose video called Statism, the Most Dangerous Religion, that will break it down even in more detail in 12 minutes. Or if you're reading the print version of the book, there's a QR code here. You scan that on your phone as you're reading, and it screen pops the video, and you are brought to a moment of, you can kind of drill down in a very kind of, effective way. We
Wow.
break down the alternative, which is voluntarism. So are you a statist or are you voluntarist? Very, effective. And, the difference between voluntarism and all the other isms, I like to say that voluntarism is the only ism that is fair for everyone. And so here is kind of voluntarism compared to the other isms. And if you believe in minarchism, having a minimal government, if you're a strict constitutionalist in the United States, then you think that the government should rob people to pay for fire protection, police, military, roads, and courts. If you're a conservative, well, you think that there's a little bit more that the government should do. So they should rob people for all the first stuff, all the things the minarchists think they should be robbed for. But, we also need unemployment insurance and retirement insurance and limited health care and limited housing and, education and stuff like that. Now, if you're a socialist, well, you think that the government should rob everybody for all those things, but also the government needs to rob everybody to have universal health care. So we should have all the other stuff and universal health care. Now, if you're a communist, then you think, well, the government needs to rob everybody to have all that other stuff and housing and energy and clothing, and all the other stuff. And so voluntarists are down here, and voluntarists are not willing to use violence against peaceful people. They will seek to acquire desired services through voluntary relationships. And so, like I said earlier, the magic of voluntarism is there's an understanding that the free market and mutual aid societies and nonprofits and real charities and a variety of other institutions that can all be voluntary can provide everything the government does better, faster, and cheaper. And people are going to be dramatically wealthier without government. And so there's a little bit of that. Here's another kind of explaining to people where voluntarists sit, what your teacher told you in the mandatory government school is you've got communism on the far, far left, and you've got fascism on the far, far right. And in between communism and fascism, there's Democrats on the left, there's moderates in the middle, and there's Republicans on the right. And then, just a little bit further from a Republican is a fascist. Now, what's the reality is you can better think of it, if you want to look at just a left-right spectrum, you could think of communism and fascism on the far left, and that's total tyranny, right? That's the government's running everything 100%. And then as you go to the right part of the scale, then you get socialists, then you get, liberals, limousine liberals, then you get the moderates, then you get the conservatives. And as you get more and more towards real freedom, you get libertarians, and voluntarism is total freedom or real freedom. So I'm an advocate for not fake freedom, not fake government freedom. I'm an advocate for real freedom. Now, an even better way of taking a look at the political spectrum, this is called the Nolan chart. And the Nolan chart was developed by an MIT student by the name of David Nolan. And he recognized that the left-right political spectrum didn't really measure anything, okay, for the reasons that I outlined just a second ago. And he said, what's the best way to really map the political spectrum? And if you really think about it, lefts and liberals, they're for a whole bunch of personal freedom. The government shouldn't be in the bedroom. The government shouldn't be, mandating, prostitution or deciding, whether or not you can smoke plants. But they don't. So they're on this chart of personal freedom. They score very, very high, okay, on the personal freedom index. But on this index of economic freedom, they score very, very low, okay. And so the government, has got to redistribute income. It's got to control the economy. It's got to be, it's got to limit how much money people can make. It's got to, rent control. It's got to have, things like that. And so if you believe in a little bit of economic freedom and a whole bunch of personal freedom, you're on the left. Now, if you believe in a whole bunch of economic freedom, so the government shouldn't be intervening in the economy, the government shouldn't be taxing people based on their income, the government shouldn't be, granting monopoly privileges in the economy, and you believe in a whole bunch of economic freedom, but those liberals, we can't, we can't have men marrying men and women marrying women, and like we got to, we can't have gambling. That would be wrong. So now you believe in just a little bit of personal freedom, but a whole bunch of economic freedom. Well, that puts you on the right. That makes sense. Okay. And so what if you believe in a whole bunch of both economic freedom and personal freedom? You're for maximum personal freedom and you're for maximum economic freedom. The government shouldn't be doing anything because it's illegitimate and undesirable and unnecessary. Well, boom, you're a voluntarist. And so that is the best way of understanding the political economy. This chart has been popularized by the advocates for self-government. You can go to the Advocates for Self-Government website. You can take the world's smallest political quiz on this for yourself and see where you fall, or people personally fall on this. I modified it a little bit from the way that the advocates present it, because there's a chasm right here, and this chasm is voluntarists think that government is illegitimate, undesirable, and unnecessary, where libertarians, they're kind of, the average libertarian actually believes that the government is legitimate, desirable, and necessary. And so that's what really separates a voluntarist from a libertarian. A libertarian is kind of an umbrella term. Voluntarists fall into fall under the libertarian umbrella term, but that's, the real difference. Now we're at the 25 techniques. And so I'm just going to roll through this, very, very quickly, and we'll get into some of them. We talked about the main one, which is controlling the information that kids receive about the legitimacy, the desirability, and the necessity of having a government in mandatory schools running the Prussian model of education. And public school is where the catechism is taught. And so there's a variety of indoctrination techniques. There's a variety of obedience techniques. And I break that down in the book. The second technique is government-affiliated scouting programs that indoctrinate the kids into the pseudo-religion of statism with flag worship, allegiance oaths, indoctrinated respect and legitimacy for the government. They give the kids awards, Cub Scout adventure loops, and Boy Scout merit badges for learning and regurgitating the doctrine of the religion. And so scouting, there's a whole curriculum. Like I could go into so in the book it breaks down the hidden curriculum of the Cub Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Webelos, and the Explorers. But you're getting kids into hierarchical command and control. You're getting them into the uniform, the single form, which is artificial, group conformity with social pressure placed on kids to participate. You're indoctrinating the religion of statism, and it's just bad mojo. And it's the same technique that Hitler used, and it's the same technique that the Soviets used, and it's the same technique that the East Germans used and other countries use that are, bad countries. Everybody agrees are bad and evil countries, and I kind of break it down, in no uncertain terms. I break down the hidden curriculum of the junior JROTC, which is a program here in the United States that gets kids into the uniform and conformity. I break down a lot of so each technique, the umbrella term of, we'll say, police training. Okay, I'm breaking down many sub techniques under police training. So it's not really that there's 25 techniques. If you broke down all the sub techniques, we're talking about dozens and dozens and dozens of unethically manipulative techniques that are being used on the population to produce what are essentially cult members willing to set their morality aside and use violence on peaceful people for the religion, the church leadership of this indoctrinated pseudo-religion. And it starts with the shave-headed cult members willing to set their morality aside and use violence on peaceful people. We break down the term military basic training is an umbrella term that really, I'm breaking down, probably a dozen sub techniques under that. but there's a hidden curriculum in the military, in military basic training, that breaks people down and creates order followers that are willing to set their morality aside and use violence on peaceful people for the ideology of the state. And, as I kind of scroll through these, you're getting that information to the military, intelligence agencies, and federal and state law enforcement are being hierarchically controlled. This is one of my favorites because most people have seen it, but they've never really thought about, well, why is that done? What's going on with that? Why do they do that? And so the artificially indoctrinated holy symbol of the American flag is manipulatively woven into the burial ceremony of the deceased. Now, you can't have seen a Hollywood, if you partake in any of Hollywood's movies and television shows, everybody has seen the American military or police burial ceremony where the flag is presented to the family of the deceased. Why do they do that? It's a trick. It's to get you to associate the memory of your beloved deceased and departed with the American flag, with the government, even though it's frequently the policies of the government that have resulted in the death of your loved one. The government is the one that puts your loved one into the foreign war. Your government is the one that tricked your loved one into being part of an army of occupation. The government is the one that tricked your loved one into participating in the drug war, which got them shot, or because that's one of the the known things of prohibition is that criminal gangs are going to settle things violently, and police officers are going to die unneedlessly for something that's not really a crime.
Yeah, so basically they're using the high stress of the situation to I mean, this is how association is done in mind control, is you have to really heighten the fear, the panic, the terror, and the confusion in your mind control victim, and then you associate something, you introduce an object or a phrase or even a trigger phrase or a trigger object where they'll remember forever. They're associated with the fear, the pain, the panic, and the terror. So the next time someone challenges the United States, that person will be indoctrinated and brainwashed to believe that that's a direct threat or encroachment on their loved ones. So it means they're automatically going to step to the plate and defend the state no matter what the state is doing.
You got it. You got it. And you nailed it. You kind of set me up for the next one. And so on the positive side, they're tricking the population with an advertising technique known as anchoring. And the advertising technique of anchoring is, a lot of times, the reason that a company will pay millions of dollars to license a really, popular song, okay, and or a jingle to be associated with their product is that everybody likes that song, and so they're anchoring the enjoyment of the song to the product. They're anchoring the enjoyment of the song to the product. So when you think of the song, you think of the product. When you see the product and you see the logo, you think of the song. You like the song, so you like the product. You like and so that's a technique called anchoring. And so what they're doing with the stadium sports, paid for flag worship woven into stadium events and sports, what they're doing with the flyovers and what they're doing with the flag worship ceremonies at halftime is everybody loves a ball game, right? You're out in the sun, you're having a couple of beers, you're having, fun stadium food. Your friends are there. There's a powerful, the energy of thousands of people, and everybody's having a good time and everything. And so we're going to show you the flag. We're going to show you the jet flyover. We're going to show you the flag. We're going to show you the jet flyover, show you the flag, show you the jet flyover, and you're going to anchor the good time of the stadium event to the flag. And again, they're tricking you. They're using a kind of basic anchoring technique. Now a lot of times they'll slide it in, and in the 2025 Super Bowl. I don't know if you remember the halftime show, but they snuck the flag into the 2025 Super Bowl. They didn't do a flag worship ceremony because I think people were kind of starting to like figure that out. So what they did was they had Kendrick Lamar's backup dancers dressed in red, white, and blue, and then they had them make the flag at the same time that Mustard, the other rapper, he had two very prominent flags, like American flags, right on his on his jacket. So you're anchoring the exhilaration of the Super Bowl, the good time that everybody's having a Super Bowl party, everybody's watching the Super Bowl, everybody's drinking beer, eating wings or whatever, and like, boom, we're going to show you the flag. We're going to show you the flag. We're going to slide it into you. Technique number 9 is the government is always the hero because the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies are paying for it. And so a lot of people don't realize this, but the Pentagon has been behind 1,000 plus movies, 1,000 plus television shows that we know about. Here's another example of where, you can screen pop a video in the book. And so in the PDF of the book, I could click on this and it would pop up a trailer for a documentary, a fascinating documentary called Theaters of War that really breaks down the Pentagon program and the intelligence agency program that is weaving the American flag into moments of high positive emotion, that is making the government the hero, that is making the American military the hero, that is giving people, in many cases, a false view of what happened in that war or what happened in a war, or the government absolutely giving the government illegitimacy, and they're creating the belief that the people in the military are all good-looking, hot women, and
moral,
Tom Cruise, and
ethical.
saving the world. And that's unethical. They're weaving in the religiosity of statism into it. I'm just going to go a couple more because I don't want to give it all away. You're going to have to go get the book at seethecage.com to get everything else. But I'll just go into just one or two more just so that people understand that, hey, this is really, this is, that they're using these unethically manipulative techniques. They're tricking the population with a variety of techniques, including subliminal programming. And so this is another example where you can screen pop a video. But in this video, and for your audience that might be a little younger, on the younger side, hey kids, in the old days, television wasn't 24/7. And at the end of the broadcast day, which was usually around 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, all of the television stations would play what was called a sign-off message. And so at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, most people are already in a kind of alpha state. They're sleepy. They're not really paying attention. And so what you're seeing in this video is you're seeing these. So as these words kind of scroll off the screen, other words are for a second or two, and you can screen pop this video, you can watch the video, you can hit pause, and you can see what I'm talking about. But they're putting other words on the screen, and so as it kind of fades off for a split second, it says things like trust the government. God is real. God is watching. Believe in government God. Rebellion will not be tolerated. Obey, consume. Obey, consume. Do not question government. So they're inserting, so when people are in this highly suggestive, sleepy alpha state, they're putting words on the screen that say, trust the U.S. government, believe in government God, rebellion will not be tolerated, Do not question the government. Trust the government. And your mind is seeing that. It can't help but see it. And that's part of the way that they're tricking people into a belief in government. If you don't know this is going on and you've been watching, subliminal messages come across your screen and you didn't know that that was having, you may have a warm and fuzzy for the government because they tricked you into it. And so I'll do one more, okay, and then we'll kind of, we'll kind of wrap it up. But technique number 11. And by the way, like I'm sure a lot of people are blown. We're only on technique number 11, Jason. I mean,
There's a lot of people though that would say, "Well, I'm too smart." Like I'll just comment here as someone who's lectured some places on mind control. These
Mhm.
things do affect you. There are invisible processes in what's called your subconscious, which you are not consciously aware of, that operate in a way where these techniques are proven. That's why the techniques are used, because they're proven to infiltrate your behavior, infiltrate your nervous system, and guide your thoughts and your beliefs and your ideas on things. And the person who believes they're outside the scope of being influenced by mind control tactics, that's the perfect person to mind control. So these things do work very well at changing the perception of the public. So yeah, finish off, Howard.
So okay, I'm actually gonna do two more because I think they kind of go together. Okay. And so this we talked a little bit about anchoring before with the stadium events, and we're gonna anchor the flag to the excitement of the stadium event. But that technique is also being used in the movies and the television shows as well. And for people that might just be listening, I've got a picture of of the end of the movie Rocky, where Rocky has draped himself. I think it's Rocky 2, where Rocky has draped himself after the amazing win, after the whole movie builds up to the moment of high positive emotion, has taken the viewer on this emotional roller coaster and takes it to the apex of the Rocky's victory over the bad and evil Russians, and he's won, and he drapes himself in the American flag, and he's wearing the American flag shorts, and now they've taken that emotional excitement that they've built up and the storyline and the propaganda and everything like that, and they've anchored it to the American flag, and they've brought you to that moment of exhilaration, and he won, and yes, God, and they show you the flag, and they show you the flag, and they've
And
been
we
doing it your entire life. They've been
and
showing you
we
the flag.
and when we all know, and emotions are like crazy glue. I just want people to understand in mind control, emotions, high emotion or high impact emotion is the crazy glue that activates the illogical mind, which makes the illogical mind unable to see the programming it's being exposed to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's Superman, carrying the flag. Okay, the last one that I'm gonna do. Again, here's another, video that you can, either click on or you can screen pop. And if you're in the print version of the book, there's the QR code, and it will bring it up. And another version of the of that Hollywood has been doing is that they've been secretly product placing the flag, not just at moments of high positive emotion, but dozens and dozens of times across thousands of movies and television shows. And so this short 8-minute video, okay, if you were to click on this, shows 469 product placements of the American flag in just 12 Michael Bay movies. And I'll actually just click on this for a second and bring it up just to show everybody kind of like, what I'm talking about. But in essence, what they've done is that they've taken, and I'm going to turn the sound down here, but they're showing just a second of like where the flag is on the screen, and then
Yeah.
they've got a little arrow going to the flag, okay, and in just 12 movies, they're able to get through and kind of, and there's the flag ceremony we just talked about, but in just 12 movies, they've got over 469 product placements of the flag in just 12 movies. and there's a little arrow that points to where the flag is, and it goes ding. And then you can't really help but like watch this and go, I never noticed that they were doing it. But because the human mind and human beings are really, really good pattern recognition machines,
Hmm.
once you see that pattern, you realize, hey, that's artificial. They're doing that on purpose. Why are they doing that? Why are they putting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of product placements of the flag in just a dozen movies? Why are there 469 product placements of the flag in just a dozen movies? And you realize, hey, they're running game on me. Hey, it's a trick. Hey, that's artificial. And the fact that it is artificial is the thing that allows you to, kind of see through it. And nobody likes to have game run on them. Nobody likes to be tricked. Nobody likes to, and so one of the things that makes the Art of Liberty Foundation kind of unique is that I like to say that we're achieving what I like to call the one-way revolution. And the one-way revolution is, most people, when they realize, oh, hey, we're being tricked, we're being, they're running kind of a pimp game. A pimp is,
Hmm.
somebody that will use unethically manipulative techniques on a woman to get her to hand over a portion of her income. Once people realize that the government's running pimp game, running unethically manipulative techniques on the population to get them to turn over a portion of their income. Well, nobody likes to have pimp game run on them, and so people are like, out. Okay, I get it. I'm out. They had me, and by the way, they had me. I'm not special. They had me hook, line, and sinker. I almost signed up for the military. I was a Cub Scout. I was a Boy Scout. When I was in the Boy Scouts, I would when I saluted the flag, I would make a muscle. They had me hook, line, and sinker until somebody explained it to me, and then I was out. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm explaining it to you, and I'm giving people a really powerful tool, a really sharp knife to help explain it to their friends, their family, their relatives, their colleagues, and that's kind of what we're about at the Art of Liberty Foundation. We're trying to not just expose the illegitimacy and the criminality of government, but we have the good news message that we would all be wealthier and healthier and more prosperous, and there'd be much more harmony in society if we could have real freedom, and the free market and mutual aid societies and nonprofits and genuine charities would do everything the government does better, faster, and cheaper. And we'd all be crazy, crazy wealthy if the
Hmm.
government wasn't helping the banks and the government itself to steal the value out of everybody's money. And so
And
that's all I got to say about that.
yeah, it's a good way to end it. I just want people to know too is that all those 469 imprints of the flag, the way the human mind works, when Trump was in Butler, and it's a high emotional event, and he had his fist up, and the flag was draped, in the sky, wrapping around him. Inside your brain, every time you saw the American flag over your entire life, they all enter your brain all at the same time with the same emotional impact, which can crazy glue you to the person, to the event, and to the narrative.
Mhm.
And so it's very important people know that you should be suspicious where a man that supposedly just got shot in the ear is allowed to do that or wants to do that. That's very important to think about. So basically, Howard, the Art of Liberty Foundation, and this is the website. Again, could you mention where people can get a hold of you and get this book, or maybe even get the other book as well?
Howard. Howard. Who's
Oh, Etienne.
Oh, Etienne de la Boetie. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So first of all, before we do that, I just want to point out we only got to 12 of the techniques. Okay, and so there's another 13, which is really 14 techniques because I slid in one more technique in the 25th technique is really two techniques, but I could have been going to 30. But like, I mean, that we only touched on 13 of the 26 techniques that I outline in the book. And so like just imagine like if you weren't blown away by those 13, just imagine how blown away you're going to be by another, 13 techniques that you didn't know that was, being run on you, number one. Number two, the answer to your question is you can find me, you can get the book at seethecage.com. It is available on Amazon. Do not buy it from Amazon. Amazon is stealing the value, stealing the sales of our book. It's called Buy the Buy Box. They've given our buy box to somebody else so that we don't make as much money as you buy it on Amazon. Do not review it on Amazon, but do not buy it from Amazon. Get it at seethecage.com. It's one of the ways that they're controlling information and stealing, demonetizing people like me and trying to steal our money. Seethecage.com is the place to buy the book. You can get my other book at government-scam.com, Government, the Biggest Scam in History. And we've got a bundle that's proved to be very, very popular of both books as well. And then that's at, government-scam.com. My organization is the Art of Liberty Foundation. We are voluntarist crime fighters. We are exposing the illegitimacy and the criminality of government, and we're bringing the good news message that you don't really need government, and we'd all be dramatically wealthier, healthier, and more prosperous with more harmony in society. artofliberty.org. You can find a free kind of breakdown of the book on my Substack, artofliberty.substack.com. And you can find most of my writings for free at artofliberty.substack.com. And it has been a pleasure to be with you and your audience today.
Well, we really appreciate it, HA. We really appreciate it. So thank you for coming on and sharing that with the audience. I'm sure we're going to see you again really soon.
Absolutely, and thank you for doing what you do. It is a group effort. We all must hang together, or surely we will all hang separately.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Good to see you.